Small business is about courage, risk-taking, independence, and we small business owners are survivors. Everybody has an idea for a business, but how do you take that idea from mind to market? This is the place to learn.
Small Business School with Hattie Bryant.
It's a new kind of school. Together we'll learn about business from the inside out, from the people who've done it. We'll meet the men and women who are today's pioneers and quiet heroes. Their lives are the textbooks. Our classroom is the world.
Small Business School is made possible by support from the United States Postal Service, delivering the promise to America's 23 million small and growing businesses. There's no wait at the post office in your own office. USPS.com is waiting for you. And by Microsoft.
We see you building a new company from an old company. We see a business full of potential. We're inspired to create software that helps you reach it.
Hi, I'm Hattie Bryant. We've done this show every week since 1994. Most of the businesses we have introduced you to are very strong companies, so it comes as no real surprise to us that some of these companies continue to amaze and astonish us. In 1996, we took you to New York City to meet Andy Murstein and the team at Medallion Funding, now Medallion Financial. First, we go back, and you'll see part of that original interview, and then we go to a new report. Privately held for the first 6 decades, today we find a growing publicly traded company under third-generation leadership. New Yorkers couldn't function without taxis. The cab industry generates more than $1 billion a year, with the average ride pricing out at about $6. In 1936, Leon Murstein started in business driving a taxi. His son Alvin grew the business from $2 million to $100 million in revenues.
Okay, good luck.
Grandson Andy has his own goals.
Cab riders in New York City, there's 166 million people per year who ride New York City taxi cabs.
No, 166 million
Correct.
people per year
Correct.
ride in a taxi in New York.
It's a very large niche industry. There's 11,787 taxis, and that's been frozen since 1937. In 1937, when my grandfather got involved, they started selling those medallions for about $10 a piece. They froze that number for the last 60 or so years, and today they're each worth $200,000 now. So the value of all the New York City cabs is over $2.4 billion. Before 1979, we really only owned and managed cabs, but now we wanted to get into a new area within the cab business, and we went into financing. And financing was a natural step for us because when we started selling some of the taxis that we owned in 1979, we saw there was no financing source available for it. So we had to take back the paper ourselves. We thought it was a great opportunity, since no banks would lend to this business for whatever reason, to start lending to the cab industry, and that's how we started. In the cab business, it's really how hungry you are and how much you want to succeed in business. So what I think is great is you have a lot of minorities who come here from abroad who want to be their own boss. They can't open their own real estate company. There's perhaps a lot of obstacles. It takes a lot of money. But the cab business is something they can go into right away. We'll finance 80% perhaps of their purchase price. They'll have to come up with a small down payment, and then they make their own hours, they do what they want, they feel like they own something. A lot of banks, for some reason, do not lend to the people that we lend to. They're excellent credit risks. The problems that banks have with them is they don't have long financial histories. They don't walk into the door with 5 years audited financial statements. They probably don't know what an audited financial statement is. So we give them the opportunity to really succeed in business where banks pass on them for whatever reason. And our loan losses, we've lent over $300 million in the cab industry since 1979 and never once lost 1 cent of principal or interest on any loan we've ever done in the history of the company. I don't think one bank in the United States can make a statement like that.
Medallion Funding depends on great people like Marie Russo. Nice to meet you. I heard you're everybody's mother, so I just gave you a hug on the face just like that.
Thank you.
Can you tell us what you do around here?
I am Vice President and Chief Operational Officer of the company.
Now, what does operational officer mean?
I oversee everything that goes on in the company.
So you're human relations.
I'm
you're
human
you're
relations,
hiring and firing.
I fire, I do sign all checks. In here, we have our staff in accounting who does all postings of our receivables.
So you all know who owes money.
Yes, they know. Yes.
Medallion Funding recently formed an advertising company called Taxi Tops. It is a perfect source of new revenue because Medallion pays their customers, the taxi cab owners, a fee, then collects from the advertisers.
And every few years or so, a new opportunity comes around, and the Taxi Tops was one of them. What we do is we go out to cab companies and we sign agreements with them to place the Taxi Tops on top of their cars.
You own this physical
Correct.
thing.
We own that. We do everything for them. There's no cost to them at all, so it's really an easy sell. It's
Okay,
found
but
money.
you're in this industry, so it's a match, it's a fit for you.
Yes, it's good.
So the principle for someone who wants to expand their business is to look within the marketplace that they're already placed.
Correct.
And see how can we add on. That's efficient for you.
Yes, I
because
find-
you have all the contacts.
Correct. I think it's very difficult to go outside your normal line of business. From time to time, we look at getting involved in areas outside the cab industry. There's a lot of setup costs and time that needs to go into looking into a business, making contacts, developing relationships. The Tops work perfectly for us in that we knew the cab owners anyway because they're customers of ours.
Right.
We lend them money, we help grow their businesses, so it's a natural tie-in for us. And I think that's really the best way to expand businesses, is not develop brand new networks or brand new subsidiaries, is really to tie in what you do best. You really need to develop a niche. My grandfather started a cab business 60 years ago, and he used to say, in niches there's riches, and that's kind of our motto. We try to stay with what we do best.
You take a taxi every morning? Medallion is a special small business investment company which allows it to receive matching funds from the government when it makes loans to women and minorities. We went to visit Albert Lee, a typical Medallion customer. When he came to this country, he drove a taxi and delivered vegetables. In 1985, he purchased a laundromat and this dry cleaning business.
We provide more than just a loan. We'll provide small business assistance. We'll teach you about spreadsheet forecasting. We'll introduce you to insurance companies, to lawyers, to accountants, to suppliers, to vendors. Anything we can do to help your business, that's the benefit for both of us, is a win-win situation.
I was in a really bad situation one time, and I borrowed $30,000, and he said, bring me your old financial statement or tell me what money you owe. I said, what do you need? If you're my friend, let me borrow $30,000, that's it. He said, listen, you don't understand. Bring me all the payment you got, a new problem, and I will help you.
I've never seen also my shirt being ironed so I can see it being ironed.
Yeah,
I think that's great. That's like the new restaurants, you can see your food being cooked.
Exactly.
You know, to make sure it's exactly right. Do you think there's a big difference between your grandfather's management style, thoughts, philosophy, and your father?
Yes, I think there's a big difference from each generation.
Okay, tell me
my
about that.
grandfather was a very stern man, was very disciplined, was in the office 5:30 every morning, very energetic and tough with people. I think he thought that business had to be handled exactly as it was, as business, and really helped grow the business. And I think that's what you need when you're starting a business, is that discipline, to be committed to it and to really not be afraid to make decisions or let people go if they're not doing the job for you. My father then really took it to the next level in that he knew the business from working for my grandfather and took it to the next step by really getting involved in other areas, financing and other lines of business. And his approach, I think, was a little bit different than my grandfather's. He was not as really disciplined, but more open to new ideas. I think my grandfather, in his discipline, and when you start a business, you're very narrowly focused and you kind of concentrate on one particular thing and you don't try to do anything else. The next generation really comes along and starts expanding those horizons. And my father knew that financing was a good step. He could really dictate to other people what to do. Well, my grandfather would want to do everything himself, change a tire on a cab, drive it, manage it. My father, I think, learned the ability to really dictate to people what to do and really discipline them rather than so much himself, and really expanded it from a 10-person operation to a 20-person operation. I think every generation obviously has different goals as far as how far they want to succeed. I'm probably not going to be happy unless in 7 years we're a $1 billion company. I think we're really on our way now, and I don't think 100 million, although it's very impressive, is very satisfactory to me personally. We should be one of the largest lenders in New York City if we continue doing what we're doing and really grow the business. And I think we have an excellent staff that we've added on throughout the years, and with their help we should be able to get to that amount in about 7 years or so. You really should be thinking big, but you also have to be practical. You can't imagine yourself going from 0 to $1 billion. You need a foundation to get there. My father gave me that opportunity with that foundation of a $100 million company. So $1 billion is not out of the ordinary for us, I think. Without his help, I would never be thinking about that. But with the foundation he's built, I think it's a very possible goal to reach.
That was Andy in 1996. Next, you'll see that he is achieving his big goal and getting very close to the $1 billion portfolio. Most family businesses don't make it past the first generation, usually because the founder doesn't or won't stop to teach or make room for new blood. With the second and third generation still working side by side in a respectful relationship, we predict shareholders will continue to see their investment in Medallion Financial grow. To read the entire script of this program, go to smallbusinessschool.org.
O'clock is good. If he's there, I'll stop by then.
Naturally, Andy uses a cab to get around New York, and this is a very special one.
It's a 1977 Checker. It has 1 million miles on it.
No, they've got to sell it.
And they don't make them like they used to anymore. You know, the cab drivers these days are just as good as they were 50 years ago, but unfortunately the cabs are not. The Checker taxis, you have plenty of leg room. It was very comfortable. These days the cabs are kind of a tight squeeze. You know, we usually use it when we're taking customers around to different locations, if we want to entertain somebody in the advertising business. A lot has happened since I saw you last, Hattie. In 1995, we were still a private company, and we then went public the following year, and the company has doubled since that point.
Wow.
We bought 15 companies since you last saw us 7 years ago. When you saw us last, the portfolio was about $200 million. Today we manage over $600 million. Yeah, we got this one after we raised our second equity offering. So we just took the money and bought companies and lent it to small businesses.
Medallion Financial, how may I help you?
Now we do mezzanine financing out of Minneapolis. We do SBA loans out of Hartford, Connecticut. We do taxi top advertising out of New Orleans. We do asset-based lending here out of New York City. So we're really evolving into a full-service financial company.
What does a person need to put together to get that first 50 million?
To attract.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, you need a good story. I mean, as funny as that sounds, you really need people. Not only do you have to believe in it, which is very important, you have to have a passion for what you do, because people could see if you're serious about it and if you really have the heart to go out and grow your business. So you need the passion, you need people to believe in you and to also share that passion. So Every cycle, there's a different wave of companies that basically Wall Street becomes enamored with. Again, it's jumping on the bandwagon when the timing's right. You could have the greatest company in the world, and if the timing's not right, you're not going to be able to raise money.
Okay, when you do a merger, I think it takes a lot of forethought and strategy. How did you merge all these 15 companies?
That's a good point. I mean, we're not naive enough to think that we could do other people's jobs and businesses better than they can. When we bought this group out of Minneapolis, Medallion Capital, they had been doing mezzanine lending for 30 years. Yes, there was some duplication of services, but that's meaningless in the long run. You really want people that know what they're doing. Again, they've had a great track record. Not only do you want them, you make them sign long-term employment contracts. You want to know that they're just not taking the money and running, that they want to be part of your future also.
Okay, when I come to you as a taxi driver and explain to you my vision, do you make me produce any numbers, or do you just, one of your loan officers follows me around for a few days?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, banks, for example, have very rigid standards. They're going to want to look at 3 years financials. They're going to want to look at projections. We'll ask for that, but if you don't have it, we'll help you do it.
Okay.
We go to small businesses throughout the country that don't have access to banks, whether it's they've only been around for a couple of years, they don't have a long track record, but we believe that looking into a person's eyes, you could judge the character and their hard work and ethics. And for example, in the taxi industry, we lent over $1 billion and have 0 losses. We've never lost a dime in any loan we've made in the history of the company.
I've got that return that you asked me for.
Very good.
Yeah,
so we'll be able to work on the deal with
Michael Kowalski is president of Medallion Funding.
2 weeks, and maybe we can get some results.
He takes care of customers like Guy Roberts, who owns or manages nearly 100 medallions. The two have worked together since 1983.
Let's go in the office. Okay. I was driving a taxi to get by. I started in 1979. I probably stopped driving in about 1986. You know, by the time I built up a substantial fleet. And all the cars belong to me, but not all the licenses. The license with the medallions.
What's the challenge of working with all these wonderful internationals?
Well, for one thing, I deal with a lot of French-speaking West Africans, and I was born in France, so it's good to get to practice my French, and we just so I get to speak French every day. My manager, son, he's from Pakistan, so he can speak in their own language to the drivers from that part of the world. My dispatcher's from Bangladesh. A lot of my crew here is African, or from the Caribbean. And my secretary speaks Spanish, so we cover a lot of languages. It's kind of interesting because it's kind of a little international community, and it's amazing, that on the other side of the world, all these people are going after each other, and here everybody gets along just fine.
Marie took us across the street from Medallion Financial to have lunch at Deli on Madison, which is owned by Joe Cho, one of her customers. We learned that Korean Americans in New York City invented this type of eating establishment. It is a hybrid with deli items, hot foods, yogurt, salad bar, whole fruit, and juices. Financing this type of business has become a new niche for Medallion.
Building a rapport with our people is so important. Becoming their friend. We don't treat our borrowers like, so what? And I always tell my borrower, you're not a number. Your account number is not important to me. I want to know that you're Mr. Jones or Mr. Smith. And when you call here, I don't care about your account number. I just want your name. I look it up on the system, and I know how you're performing, and we go from there. We want everyone to be happy, Hetty.
Good morning. How are you? Good to see you.
Marie is always delighted to see her customers.
What are you here for? Can I help you?
Yeah, I just come to bring you the payment.
Your current
What do you think you do now that you do because you learned it from your father? And then how do you think you're different from him?
That's an interesting point. I think what I've learned from him is to stick with your niche. He always believed in niches, there are riches. So I've really tried to focus on businesses that he knew originally. What I think I've done different is realize that other people also have niches. So it's really just finding people that share your passion for their business and being able to pull them all together and become a larger, more diversified company.
They still have 46,000 shares left.
Andy and his father, Alvin Murstein, work hard at working well together.
They just sold out the last. I mean, he has to recognize what she does. If I've made a decision that you should not give anybody the slightest inkling, that's going to change if they go to see him. That the door is always open for him to talk to people, but not in that regard. If a decision's been made, it's been made. And I have the same respect for him. Even if I don't really appreciate the decision that he's made, I'll talk to him privately, and if he made the decision and I feel strongly the other way, we'll talk about it. 9 times out of 10 it'll get resolved. Once in a while it won't, and I'll always appreciate the fact that he started this company before I was around, and at the end of the day, you know, he'd have the final say in that regard.
Is it a lot of talking, Andy? Talk.
No, it's really seeing how somebody reacts, reading, just like with a loan. Again, you really want to be in somebody's face to see how they react to questions. When you ask them something, whether it's their vision for the company, their financial history, you could tell if somebody's serious about it, what they're hiding. And it's the same with people. When I sit down with my father, sometimes he doesn't talk as much as my mother, for example, but you could tell by facial movements, by the way people act in certain situations, how they're feeling. So it's just getting together face to face, whether it's making a loan or meeting with somebody at your company, and that's how you can make the best decision.
Give some advice to someone who wants to grow their business, who didn't grow up with at the kitchen table learning everything.
I think that if you have the right attributes, you'll be successful whether or not your family was in the business. Before I got involved here, my father never asked me to come work for the business. He actually encouraged me not to. So I worked in investment banking for a couple of years. I always worked, whether it was in high school, I worked, college, I worked, after college, I worked, and I always wanted to prove myself then just as I do now.
We have to give the next generation more credit than we've given them. They see things that we have taken for granted. They are probably more more alert as to opportunities, and they just have a different perspective. We tend to, as we become successful, we tend to be more conservative and try and preserve whatever it is that we've achieved, and they are not that concerned yet, that they still want to do things and grow things and make things larger than they are now. So we'll finish this when I get back.
Good.
All right?
Okay.
Good.
Thanks.
You balance it by trying to combine the exuberance and the enthusiasm of youth with the experience of having been there.
Okay, I'll see you later.
You just have to use your own wisdom and experience to temper the aggressiveness and the ambition and which is a good thing, of the next generation.
Yeah. What's this going to look like 10 years from now?
To get long-term capital, we're thinking about starting our own bank and having access to CDs, and therefore banks basically are in a very good position in this country in that they're taking deposits. These days they're only paying 1%. They're lending it out to us, let's say at 5%, and then we're lending it out to small businesses at 8%. There's no reason for us to still have that middleman, to use that bank. We want to have our own bank charter, and we'll be like no other bank if you come back and see us in 10 years, a bank that really cares about their small business customers.
How are you going to keep from being like those big companies that you're beating now?
I think I'll always remember the faces of the people that we've helped. I mean, for example, we made a loan 3 years ago. The person was handicapped. He came to this country with almost no money in his pocket. No one was willing to give him the loan that he needed to succeed. He came to us. We funded him. He grew his company. He literally broke down crying at the loan table. when we closed the loan, and I'll always remember that, how thankful he was that we helped him. And I'll never forget the look on his face when we actually handed him the check and he realized his dream, and that'll always be embedded in my memory.
The passage of the Small Business Investment Act of 1958 made way for small business investment companies to form. Today, Medallion Financial is just one of several hundred around the country, and you can find a complete listing on our website and at the National Association of Small Business Investment Companies, NASBIC.org. Medallion Financial is being driven by a mission to help small businesses grow. Its leadership has the exuberance of youth and the wisdom of experience. With this formula, the $1 billion portfolio goal may soon seem small. We'll see you next time.
Small Business School is made possible by support from the United States Postal Service, delivering the promise to America's 23 million small and growing businesses. There's no wait at the post office in your own office. USPS.com is waiting for you. And by Microsoft.
We see you building a new company from an old company. We see a business full of potential. We're inspired to create software that helps you reach it.
If you want to learn more about starting, running, and growing a business, come to our website, smallbusinessschool.org. There's streaming video and interactive study guides. The only way we can compete with big business is to be faster, smarter, and better. We are the engine of the American economy. We create the jobs. Small business is about big commitment. It's about sacrifice and struggle. But we do it because we say, if I don't do this, my life won't be complete.